Yeah, that gives the general pragmatist idea that no description, or if you like, no interpretation, is closer to reality than any other. Some of them are more useful for some purposes than others, but that's about all you can say. And Nietzschean perspectivism, which says, you can't rise above interpretations and get to facts, or dig down below interpretations to get to facts, is substantially the same thing as I meant before when I said the pragmatists try to get rid of the reality appearance distinction. I mean, the Greek idea is that at a certain point in the process of inquiry, you come to rest because you've reached the goal. And the pragmatists are saying, we haven't the slightest idea what it would be like to reach the goal. The idea that the aim of inquiry is conformity to correspondence to reality, or seeing the face of God, or
just the mirror of truth. The
is
idea
one
that there's
that
a
we just can't make any use of. All we really know about is how to exchange justifications of our beliefs and desires with other human beings, and as far as we can see, that will be what human life will be like forever. So pragmatists regard the Platonist attempt to get away from time into eternity, or get away from conversation into certainty, as a product of an age of human history where life on Earth was so desperate and it seemed so unlikely that life could ever be better that people took refuge in another world. Pragmatism comes along with things like the French Revolution, industrial technology, all the things that made the 19th century believe in progress. When you think that the aim of life is to make things better for our descendants rather than to reach outside of history and time, it alters your sense of what philosophy is good for. In the Platonist and theistic epoch, the point of philosophy was to get you out of this mess into a better place. And
God.
The realm of Platonic ideas, the contemplative life, something like that. And the reaction against this Greek Christian pursuit of blessedness through union with a natural order is to say there isn't any natural order, but there is the possibility of a better life for our great-great-great-grandchildren. That's enough to give you, all the meaning or inspiration or whatever that you could use.
So, as you can see, there are lots of videos out there. This is a series.
I think
Philip
the
Reynolds
book of mine that's been most widely read is Contingency, Irony, and Solidarity. It's certainly the one that's generated the most fan mail.
I never sent him.
I get letters
Enjoyed the
of
book.
appreciation about that book, but not about any of the other books. So I guess I regard that one as my most successful production.
I don't know how old this
It's
video
the one
was,
I
because
find
he's written
most
other, he
interesting.
wrote other books closer
I
to his
suspect
death
that Fame
that I think were very similar.
produces more
the way they
interesting
read.
work on the part of the person who has become famous, because his or her ideas are more widely discussed, debated. So the originator of the ideas gets more ideas as a consequence of having earlier ideas more widely discussed. I doubt that there's any real downside to fame. I wrote a book chapter talking about the Nietzsche, Heidegger, Derrida sequence, saying that Heidegger's mission in life was to get beyond Nietzsche, to find something to say that Nietzsche hadn't already said, and that Derrida's mission in life was to get beyond Heidegger, to say something that Heidegger hadn't already said. So I think of them as forming a dialectical sequence that embodies a good deal of what was important in 20th century philosophy.
I find
When I
it
say that I
difficult
don't
to
think
say
philosophy
everything
as
that's
a
already been
discipline has
said.
a mission. What I mean is that academic disciplines are arbitrary, are created by drawing fairly arbitrary boundaries within
It helps when you live in a
intellectual
community
life
where hardly anyone else
in order
does this
to
stuff.
make career paths
You get away with
possible
murder
for
without
young people.
really trying very
I
hard.
think taking the boundary lines between philosophy and
Trying to get
religion,
into
or
Harvard or
between anthropology and sociology,
University
with
of
any great
Pennsylvania.
seriousness
But
is making a
might not even be
mistake.
able to be a
It's
student
only
there, let alone
librarians and deans who
faculty.
need to worry about where one discipline stops and another begins. So I wouldn't bother to ask about where literature stops and where philosophy begins, or where sociology stops and political philosophy begins. When I'm not
So he's fun. You can, you know, instead of watching cartoons on Saturday mornings, you can watch Richard Rorty videos. I don't know. Are there cartoons on Saturday mornings? Are they always?
Whenever I get a chance to. When my 10-year-old is, I say, Dad, let's go. My wife is saying, I want to go. Sorry.
Well,
There
so
should be a philosophy for marriage.
you do have a couple days off coming up. I don't know how that works. Usually on Thursdays on Thanksgiving, I take my family to the UAA feast at the Gorsuch Commons, which I believe begins at 11:30, and it's free, although they ask that you bring canned goods as a donation if you feel up to it. Not to the feast, but canned goods for the homeless, for those that get bags of food. But if you're interested, keep in mind that's one of those freebie, wonderful opportunities on campus. It's not just for students or faculty or staff, it's for the community. So it's open door, everybody that comes in gets as much food as they want, as long as the food lasts. And it goes till, I think, like 1:30 or something like that. So you do have to get there on time, otherwise you lose that. But they have ham and they have turkey and they have all the fixins and vegetables. There's usually students that are serving the meal, student volunteers and stuff. But this year I'm not going to that because my son invited us, so we're going to go to his place. Because when your son invites you, that's what you do. You go there. So that's cool. What else? We don't have class on Thursday, obviously, so just make sure you know that. I do need a good quiz question, though. I suppose the question that occurs to me, that I feel is a real live question, is I do absolutely believe in physics. When physics teaches laws of motion and things of that sort, how mass works and so on. Granted, that is a conceptual schema, and thanks to us creating the conceptual schema, like mathematics, we have tools that we could use to predict things like how the rockets are going to land on the pads, so that Elon Musk could be proud of 2 rockets landing simultaneously, exactly together, which is what simultaneously means. But so I tend to repeat myself and say things over again.
Like a pair of two.
Yeah, but in any case, so the tool works. You could say, okay, well, we've created the tool. The world wasn't like that until we invented the tool, but the tool actually works. We might find other methods that surpass that tool, but what we mean by that is that they work in other situations where that tool doesn't. Right, so we've got multiple tools, all of which are useful. When you've got a problem, you figure out which tool will be the right tool for the job and use it, right? And if it turns out that, gosh, we've got a new problem that none of the tools work for, that's when you need some autistic genius to go out there and figure out a new symbolic system that will solve that problem, right? Which could happen, right? Has happened. So physics, that's obviously one part, and one part of our social problems that we have, because we're living in a real world that has constant restrictions on the sort of, you have to breathe. You can't just decide you're going to walk to Mars. That won't work, right?
You sure?
Well, everyone I've seen that tried to walk to Mars is still here trying to figure out how to get that first step, because
Yeah,
they
okay.
don't go very far when they take that first step. They're still here, right?
Yeah.
And so that's certainly, thinking of the individual that we failed, society failed this guy. Well, he failed us too, right? So what do you think we should do with people in that situation? What do you think we should do with people like this young man? How could it have been updated 41 minutes ago? I read that at like 8 o'clock this morning.
Probably found a typo. And then fix it.
So he's a 33-year-old. So he was in and out. In and out. When you get right down to the law, what seemed to be the difficulty here, said that he was considered incapable, incompetent of standing trial. So they let him out. That's the problem. When someone is incapable of standing trial, that person's going to be incapable of living on their own in our society. And basically they said, here's the door, and out he is. Somehow, even though he was restricted from going back to his parents' place, which I would imagine would be the only place he knew to go. But they had a restraining order, so he wasn't supposed to go there. Of course, that is where he actually went. Since he wasn't able to go into the house, he hid out in their sauna for quite some time. Until eventually, it seems obvious, with no food, he became starving. So he left the sauna, stole one of the vehicles from the family because he knew where the key was, drove just somewhat down the road basically until he realized that wasn't going to get him food. So he stopped where he saw somebody, and it's apparently the guy he killed. He stole his debit card, which then he immediately drove with to McDonald's and ate at McDonald's. So he was starving. So what did he do? Basically, but I mean, the situation put him in a totally untenable position. And we already know that he's incapable of solving even normal difficulties. So, how do we change the law so that this doesn't happen again? Because otherwise it will, right? So, what do you think would be the thing we should do? I mean, because on the one hand, well, we don't want to spend more money doing this. Society is withdrawing its funding. On the other hand, we basically set our community up to have mentally ill people out and about in desperate situations. When you're expecting to be able to just walk about without having to wear armor, carry your sword, make sure that your girlfriend is on the right side. No, you want her on this side so that your sword arm is free to fight the crowd.
Well, what if they come in from behind you? And you have
Well,
to
you've
turn around
already
and
killed,
draw your sword.
you've already killed them,
Oh, then you're good.
right?
Yeah.
That's also why the eaves,
I
you
mean,
know, right, you
that's all if you're
you keep
right-handed,
her
right?
up. Yes.
Okay.
Well, left-handed people are evil. They screw everything up. So is that an interesting question? What would you do? What do you think? I mean, that's where, you know, we want to improve things, progress. We want, you know, the future for your grandchildren to be better than it is for you today. But we don't want them to be in the kind of dystopia that we often imagine, you know, where we've chemically reduced everybody's feelings and dressed everybody in white, you know. I mean, you've seen dystopias, right? Where everything is made less and less human in the attempt to keep us from being dastardly humans. By the way, I'm sure that none of you will be able to get an answer for that would work. That's depressing, isn't it?
Slightly,
You're setting us up for failure.
Yes.
I mean, if we
So
combine
why am
all of
I
our
asking you to
answers.
do that? Why am I asking you to do that? To vent your frustration.
Also, if we find more answers that won't work, we might be closer to the one that does.
We could actually, one of these days, we should be able to find a solution to it. I
Let's
think
hope.
one of the things would be, well, on the one side, we could have a Holocaust. The Nazis tried that. Remember, the first people that they destroyed, gathered up and destroyed, were the mentally incompetent. And they expanded.
It would do the job.
Well, it didn't, actually.
It did.
Well, because we still have the problem. 'Cause obviously the Nazis did not solve that
It
problem.
was a temporary solution.
Then there's the American solution, and that lasted for quite some time, and that was to prevent mentally incompetent people from having children by sterilizing them. We did that for a while.
One of my ancestors actually escaped from one of those places. That's why I'm here
So how do you feel about that
today. I
approach?
feel fine.
See, my ancestors didn't keep track of any of that sort of thing, so I have no clue how we managed to survive.
Well, he was rounded up because he was poor.
Well,
Living in
that's,
a camp.
that was one of the thinking, that if you're poor, you're probably mentally, the reason you're poor is because you're mentally incompetent.
There was thousands and thousands of people, all 50 states, that were rounded up just because they were poor, not because they had mental illness.
Right.
Or anything wrong with them. They were just
And
poor.
the same thing with race. Races were treated that way. Was reading an article just, I guess, yesterday, maybe it was in the Anchorage Daily News, maybe the Washington Post, where one of the people in India, who was Dalit, right, the lowest caste, had been asking these uppercase people to pay his son for the money that they owed him, $80. And because they were insulted by this low case person speaking up to them. They attacked him and scalped him.
Yeah.
Did you read about that?
No, but I know about Indian culture, their tribe system, and it's horrible.
Yeah.
People treat each other. Even to the point where the government provides homes for people that fall in love, get married from two separate classes to keep them safe from their own families,
Mm-hmm.
because their own families are killed.
And then of course another would be a biochemical repair, you know, for the people that are mentally ill. I mean, that's, I remember I had my own experience with that, and I'd love to see them come up with some way of using stem cells that could be inserted so that the brain would all of a sudden, "Whirr! Now it works." Oh. You probably still have to go back to school. I don't think you'd be able to connect all the dots that your teachers had fed into your head that never made sense to you. Commas would suddenly begin to work for him. But boy, that would be, wouldn't that be great if we could basically save people from mental incompetence? Wow. I would be in for that myself. There's all those really dumb decisions I ever made. Man, get those fixed.
See, but then how would we learn?
Well, maybe it's wrong to say that we learn from our mistakes. It is true that we learn from our mistakes. Maybe that's not the only way we can learn. We learn from stories. I don't have to fall through the ice on the pond myself to know that if the ice is only a couple inches, you shouldn't walk on it. How did I know that? Not because I discovered it, but because I've read stories of other people who made those mistakes.
Right, so somebody had to make the mistake to learn from it.
That's true. That's true. You might be able to use an avatar in a computer program to discover it. You know, so maybe we don't have to have someone experience pain and suffering or worse death from drowning. I can create an avatar. Watch the avatar experience at least what has been successfully encoded in the life world of the avatar.
I was gonna say, one of the avatar programs where you upload your full life, so it's actually just a copy of yourself.
Yeah, I tried that, and the darn picture wouldn't accept, so I'm not really fully fledged on the avatar yet. Oh well, so are you gonna have a good weekend? You're gonna survive, etc.? You're gonna eat lots of food and come back and not fit your clothing? So new t-shirts. As you can see, my wife already has prepared my attire for the day when I'm going to be much bigger, around the middle. She's given me lots of growing. So she's a smart cookie. Although she doesn't really want me to eat smart cookies. She wants me to eat, healthy celery.
Oh. Oh.
Celery is like by definition
Celery's okay chopped up and minced.
peanut butter,
Peanut butter.
You know, or
cream
peanut
cheese
butter.
or something,
Yeah.
so that it basically becomes a means of delivering something really delicious instead of
Yeah.
eating it itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just holding what you really want to eat.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
You too,
See you later.
and be safe out there. Don't come back after the weekend with like a leg in a cast.
No promises,
You know,
but
lots
I'll
of
do my best.
lots of students do that. Don't.
Well, I'll be taking